everyone. Thanks. That was very energetic on my part.
I was trying to figure out, like, does she think this is a test run or something?
Maybe.
Like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just so excited.
There we
the
go.
Jets are home
There it is.
for one game.
You found it.
Saturday afternoon,
Next
right
level.
now, 12:30. Let's go, bringing the energy. I'm
Right.
sure everybody else will as well. Welcome to Check In. I am Sarah Lesky. He's Jamie Thomas. Thanks so much for watching us, whether you're streaming on X, Facebook, YouTube as well. We love to see so many of you already in the chat, as well as we get you ready today for tonight's game against the Flyers, kicking off a stretch of 5 straight games against the East.
Yeah, and another one of those classic one game at home before the Jets go on another road trip. They just finished off a 2-game back-to-back win in Ottawa, not so lucky in Nashville. Just before we get going, it's tonight's save of the game for the hats here. That's what I'm wearing. Last time we waited too long to tell you what's going on. Stock level wear caps are 30% off. Choose from a wide variety of styles. This one, and other ones. Available at any of our Jets gear booths located throughout the concourse. 30% off.
There you go.
These hats. There you go.
Looking good.
We did our part.
All right.
We should get free stuff out of it, but I know we talked about this. I'm always
That is a complaint. That's an issue that you can have. We will have.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Way more important
March
things.
airing of grievances for you at some point in time.
Thank
but
you.
we have a very busy next 30
listen
minutes
to me.
for people.
You do listen to me. Okay, that's nice. Okay, so lots of stuff going on.
Yep.
Brian Boucher will be joining us a little bit later from NBC Universal in Philadelphia, also on TNT broadcast, to talk about the Flyers, a very interesting team who the Jets will see here twice in a matter of a week.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. John Tortorella has done a wonderful job rebuilding this team. They block a lot of shots. They're always hard to play against. I don't think the reputation ever changes in Philadelphia for some reason. Outside, I know the Broad Street bully thing hasn't really carried over, but they're always hard to play against.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a certain identity that if you are a Philadelphia sports team, I think that you have to subscribe to.
True.
Yeah.
You have the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles in town. A little bit of pressure.
There you go. We will take you inside the Jets dressing room as well. Morning skate, obviously, done here at Canada Life Center. We will hear from Dylan DeMelo, too. And the Jets come into this one having seen their winning record come to an end at 11 games. But, 11-1 over their last 12 games. Not too shabby. I see a bunch of people in the chat already with that glass half full. All right, it's just time for another streak to get going here tonight.
Yeah, that's the positive part of it. And we'll hear from Adam Lowry here momentarily, and certainly Scott Arniel about the end of the win streak. The Jets have done a wonderful job parking things in all aspects, and wins and losses, and being prepared for the next game. And that's clearly the idea for this one. But it was disappointing to see them lose finally, because you just expect it now after a while. So that game in Nashville, they got a little bit goalied by San Jose. I think they got full goalied by UC Saros and the Nashville Predators. Winnipeg had a lot of great opportunities on the power play. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But they got goalied flat out. UC Saros was outstanding. And Scott Arniel talked about how he didn't know how Saros found a couple of the shots.
Yeah.
In particular when the Jets were on the power play. But that's what happens. And that is UC Saros and Nashville played how we had expected them to play all year.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the Nashville Predators that we expected. They still had a hard time scoring goals, which has been their downfall. But that's the game plan that I expected from Nashville that has not materialized at all this year.
Yeah, and it was the third game in 4 nights for the Jets. I thought the effort was certainly there. You go back to back. So both games that were in Nashville for them this season were the second game of back to backs. They're coming in from Ottawa. That isn't a short jaunt either.
No,
you think sometimes with the East Coast, we always talk about how short the distance is, the travel time is between the two. But once you start talking about Tennessee and getting down in there, I mean, that isn't a short flight either. And you mentioned the power play. So I asked you before, is the power play a concern? I think they're 0 for 14. They haven't scored in their last 5 games. That could have been the difference in that game. But, I mean, you're going to see ebbs and flows be throughout the power play throughout the season.
And Scott Arniel talked about that today, is the fact that he felt that, especially in Ottawa, that power play did not look crisp in Ottawa at all. And that's when they had that extended 5-on-3. They had another 5-on-3 against Nashville, but they had generated way more. So that is always the argument. While the stats don't say that you're scoring, it's about what you generate, what you're producing, and you're creating momentum from your man advantage. And I felt the Jets were doing that in Nashville. Again, UC Saros was the story in that situation. And then Kyle Connor had 3 good looks. And 9 times out of 10, those are going in. But Saros made the saves when necessary, and that was the story. So I don't think – so, again – we're not in that place where they're still first in the NHL in the power play. Home. Yeah, and certainly first at home. So I don't think there's a point where you're going, okay, you got to mix things up or change things around. they were better in Nashville than they were in Ottawa the night before, and that's important.
Absolutely. So tonight they go up against a Flyers team that, I think the numbers at times can be deceiving when you look just at their production on the road in terms of penalty kill, or what their strength is for the penalty kill. Since January 1st, they have the 7th best penalty kill in the league. So they will be going up against the league's best home power play.
Yeah.
So special teams, as we know, can be a difference maker in games, whether it be regular season or the postseason. Neil Pionk said after the game in Nashville, a little bit of a funk when describing the power play, just not connecting, not firing on all cylinders. But I think we get the day off tomorrow, being yesterday.
Yep.
Morning skate, we will sharpen up. So we will look to see what the power play has in store for us, if given the opportunity this evening.
So should we take it? Well, Adam Lowry was asked about the end of the winning streak at 11, getting closer to the Oilers' record of 16, but they didn't get there. It would have been the second longest if they got to 12. But here's Adam Lowry and Scott Arniel about the loss in Nashville.
Go into every game expecting to win and expecting to put our best foot forward. Obviously, Comms gave us a great chance to win. Saros made some big saves. I think, disappointed to see this streak end, but like I said, we go into the games expecting to win, and when the result's not there, we're disappointed. I think, it was a good rest day yesterday. We had a nice meeting this morning to kind of refocus and get back at it. We know, Philly's a real hard-working team. They're right in the thick of things. So, yeah, we can be disappointed with the previous game, but, at the same time, we now had the morning skate. We got to wash it and get ready for the Flyers.
Okay, it was Adam Lowry. No, just Adam Lowry.
Okay.
I oversold that one.
Well, no, you did. You can never oversell it.
Yeah,
He's always,
yeah.
We always appreciate being able to hear from Adam because of the insight that he brings, and he can take a very level-headed approach to things. So always appreciate being able to hear from the captain. He spoke to the media in the scrum earlier this morning. Let's take a look at what the lines you can expect for today. Going into this game, this is what we are anticipating. You will notice on the fourth line, Morgan Barron returning to the lineup. We thought it might happen on the road. It did not, but after missing the last 8 games, he draws back in. Connor Hellebuck in net, and Logan Stanley on that third pairing.
Right. And with regards to Morgan Barron, he touched on, he threw a huge check at Montreal. That's back on January 28th. And you didn't think anything of it. And then he said he went to the bench, felt something was off. They got looked into, and clearly it was something wrong. So he missed his extended amount of time with the Four Nation face-off break. Didn't miss that many games, but nice to have him back. And what he brings clearly is size.
Yes.
Certainly on that fourth line. So Rasmus Kupari, David Gustafsson will come out. So we have to give him a lot of credit. He played fantastic.
Yep.
During his time, and that is all attributed to the fact that he just got a lot of games under his belt, started getting more and more confidence. So I imagine it's a tough decision, but to get the size back in your lineup is huge for the Jets. He's a good penalty killer as well. So nice to have Morgan Barron back with the Jets on that fourth line.
Yeah, Scott Arniel was asked about the return of Barron when he spoke to the media this morning, and that was what he pointed to as well. Size, power. He's heavy on the forecheck, saying that they miss their size. And you know what you're going to get with him. As a coaching staff, you know what Morgan is going to bring to the table each and every game.
Yeah, and so, again, against a team like Philadelphia, and then going into the playoffs, size is so important, and the commitment and know exactly what you're going to get from. You just need that consistent play, and that's what Morgan Barron provides night in and night out. And it's just a great guy to get back in the lineup. In a critical part of the schedule.
Yeah, and it's a busy night in the NHL this evening. You look at a number of the teams that are involved, so maybe we will see a little bit of movement, whether it be jockeying when it comes to wildcard positions or just closing or extending leads when it comes to the standings. But right now, going into tonight's game in the Central Division, the Jets with the 87 points, Dallas behind them at 78, Minnesota is 72. Colorado has 72 points as well, and they earned that first wildcard spot. So a lot of movement can still happen, in particular when you think about maybe that second, third wildcard spot with respect to the Central Division, and then a lot on the line for Philadelphia, who is trying to eke their way back into the wildcard position, and that's something that we will discuss with Brian Boucher. But just
can we point to the trade? So this was pointed out in the chat, and this is a little bit earlier today. The Colorado Avalanche have made another trade. Of course, they traded Mikko Rantanen a little bit earlier this season. So Rangers have traded Ryan Lindgren and for Jimmy Vesey to the Colorado Avalanche, and same for Juuso Parssinen, defenseman Calvin DeHaan, and some draft picks. So some depth for the Colorado Avalanche, who are trying to make James Duthie's job a lot harder at Trade Center coming up next Friday.
Well, there's going to be so much discussion about trades, potential trades over this next week. A lot of intrigue about what's going to happen when it comes to movement and with how many teams, especially when you look in the Eastern Conference, are still right in that mix. As we mentioned, Philadelphia being one of them. What will we see happen? Will we see teams decide to make significant moves? Will they stick to their plans? A lot to talk about. And that is one of the things that was asked about Scott Arniel and Adam Lowry, just with the trade deadline now less than a week away, just their mindset going into this in the last week.
And before Adam answers this question, like, he's just so good at this. You get, like, there's a human side to all this. We all get excited as fans of the game. You want to see people moving, changing addresses, but there's another human element to this side of it. Yeah. And Adam touches on that.
I think the trade deadline, for players in the league, it's always an interesting time. Obviously, fans speculate and they want moves to be made and, things like that. At the same time, as a player, the standpoint, that's people's livelihoods, that's their families, their kids, in school or whatnot, uprooting their lives and, having to move kind of at the whim. So, I think in here we don't really pay a whole lot of attention to kind of what happens, obviously, when moves are made or whatnot. Then, kind of there's the excitement whether you're adding players or things like that. I think, at our jobs, we try and put ourselves in the best position possible that, to make the organization feel like we have a chance to go on a run, potentially win the Stanley Cup. And, if they feel like, to push us over the top, we need to add, then so be it.
There's two sides of it. If you're not having a very good season as an individual or as a team, you probably, there's all kinds of speculation going on. Usually when you're high, you do have a good team, you're probably looking for depth. You're not looking for the blockbuster. I think that everybody, I wouldn't say excited about it. There's lots of players sometimes that are worried, but at the same time, I think it's just part of the business that you get used to. I think that this year to me is different because there's so many teams that are still in the hunt, specifically in the East. I thought last year there was more trades maybe that happened last week that I got ahead of the deadline. So this one's kind of funny. It just kind of seems like everybody is still maybe uncertain what they want to do here. I'm talking more about more teams. There's way more teams that, kind of just, are we in? Are we going to be out? So I think that everybody just, as players, as coaches, you're watching the league, kind of seeing maybe there's some healthy scratches all of a sudden happening, but I think it'll happen starting today, moving in the rest of the week, that things will start to shift.
For a good team like yours, is there an argument to be made for standing pat, or is that not trying?
I think that just Chevy. The one thing about Chevy, they do their homework, and we're gonna take this right to the 3 o'clock in the East, to see what's available. Because if you have a chance to make yourself a little bit better, then you need to do that. Well, that means us standing pat, and that's also, as we've sort of shown all year long, we're a good hockey team. So that'll be the big part of the decision making when we get to that moment, 3 o'clock on Friday.
And when you look at the deadline on Friday, the Jets going into that, so they will head out onto the road after this game, or they head out on Monday, but they will play the New York Islanders on Tuesday. They play Philadelphia again on Thursday. Then they are in New Jersey on Friday. Now, Kevin Shoveldayoff, the scouting staff, is going to stay in Philadelphia and conduct trade deadline day there, and then go to New Jersey for the game. The team will have bussed after the game in Philadelphia to Jersey to get ready. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because back-to-back games, there's going to be no morning skate. It's not going to be a scenario where if you are a Jets fan, you're going to be able to be watching the different feeds of people on X, whether it be the Ken Weaves, Mike McIntyre's, Mitchell Clinton's, so on and so forth, to say, player X has just left the ice, is on the ice, it's not. So it'll be a little bit different. I always appreciated when it was a game day.
Yeah.
Because you had everybody there, so you were able to keep a little bit more of an eye on what was going on. But it will certainly be very interesting to see how Kevin Cheveldayoff and the rest of the general managers approach this deadline.
Yeah, and Chris Johnson tweeted out yesterday that there's not a lot of before, of course, this Avalanche and Rangers trade, that not a lot was going on because people it's pretty much echoing exactly what Scott or Neil is saying. That is, they don't know where they're sitting right now.
Well, let's take a look at the East.
Yeah,
and this is strictly the wild card. So we didn't pull up the different divisions being Metro and Atlantic, but you take a look at how close it is and how many teams are still in play there.
Yes. You could argue Pittsburgh's out of it.
Yes.
The Islanders are kind of like Buffalo is. No offense, Sabres fans. Philadelphia's kind of on that cusp right there right now, but they haven't been able to stay consistent throughout this run here. Columbus is an incredible story.
We said it before when the Jets played Columbus was the last to mention it. I think there are so many of us that are hockey fans, sports fans that have a soft spot for Columbus, maybe anyways, but especially with everything that organization has been through this season and in recent season, all of the loss that they have had to deal with.
Yes.
It would be so tremendous for those players to be able to experience the postseason in that fan base as well.
And Detroit's kind of like been out for so long, you're kind of getting a soft spot for them. But there is the point of that showing you that standing is the mess.
Yes.
That is why there isn't that much movement going on. You get a team like Colorado who's trying to get more depth because clearly there's a lot of holes in their roster outside of the elite players that they have who are pretty damn good. They've done a good job in that aspect of adding depth. So we'll have to see who else wants to be a dance partner at this point. The Rangers are a mystery team. They've been up and down all year, and they've been inconsistent for the most part.
Yeah, one of the names that we've heard a lot about comes from the Flyers, being Scott Laughton.
Yes.
And this was a really good tweet.
Yes, and I know this. I just read a little bit earlier, enough of the rumors, but this is kind of fascinating. It's you have to create or be impressed by art, and this is, as Frank Saravalli called it, it's art. So this is well done.
Yes.
Yeah.
Happened so this trip to Winnipeg is their last road game before the trade deadline.
Yeah.
And so Scott Laughton putting out a lot of people.
I like how there's like no caption at all.
Yep, but making reference to, is this the Last Supper?
Right.
For a number on the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, so Scott Laughton is in that conversation too, right? Of a guy that could be on the move. So that's the it's just great.
I would love to hear the story.
To have a sense of humor.
Yes.
And understand what's going on around the team and around you, to be able to have some humor and put something out like that. You have to appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to have been a fly on the wall as they were trying to organize it all.
Yeah.
Get everybody going for it.
The poses are all pretty good. So this wasn't just thought of at that moment.
It was very well done. So kudos for that. Just a short while ago, I was able to catch up with Dylan DeMelo as well as we look ahead to this game against Philadelphia. Home for a couple of days, but only the one game. When you look at the way that this team has played overall, though, obviously with the stretch of 11-1 in the last 12 games, what is it that has stood out to you most about the team game right now?
I think just how consistent it's been. We've been really good in a lot of areas. Defensively, we've been really good, though, for long stretches of that win streak, and finding different ways to win games, whether it be goaltending, top line guys scoring or depth guys scoring, power play, PK, whatever it may be. Just seems like we won different ways, and I think that's a sign of a good team.
And how important is that? I think it's something that we talked about early on in the season about finding different ways to win, but to still be doing that, maybe even more so at this time of season as you look a month and a half left until the postseason.
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging. I think that's a huge part of our team's success is, we talk about our depth and we talk about being able to roll 4 lines and 60 or, guys that even are out of the lineup right now, we feel are NHL players, and both goalies have been fantastic all year. So, we've always said that we're a sum of all parts, and when everybody's, contributing and playing their game, we feel we're a tough team to beat, and I think we've shown that, throughout the whole season, really.
You and I are speaking before the team meetings, but this is a Flyers team that you haven't had the opportunity to see yet, but you'll see them a bunch in the next week with both games taking place. What is it that you need to be aware of, though, with the John Tortorella coach Flyers group?
Well, we know they're a team that obviously works extremely hard, well-structured, a team that is not going to give you anything easy, no easy ice. We're going to have to work for it. We're going to have to compete hard tonight to make sure that we get our chances, and, hopefully that we can, come on the winning end. It's, a hungry team, obviously. They're still fighting for playoffs. Tortorella's not going to let that team roll over easy. at any type of point in the season. So they got some good players too, obviously some top end skills. So we got our work cut out for us tonight. We we need to have a great effort tonight for sure in order to get the win.
Just under a week until the trade deadline. Is there much talk around this time of the year in the dressing room? Guys, do you keep an eye on what's going on or speculation around the league?
Just depends on what channel you got on in the room, really. That's we'll let everybody else do the talking. We have obviously no idea what's going on, even if names are floated.
Is it something you keep an eye on?
I think we're just maybe interested to see what happens in regards to see kind of the domino when it falls and if it falls or what it looks like. Whatever happens, if we bring somebody in, we know it'll be a good fit for our group, and obviously they'll be, welcomed with open arms. And if we don't do anything, we feel like we have a really good team too. So above my pay grade, we'll see what Chevy and the staff does.
Thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
I wasn't even referring to the Jets specifically. It was just more, do you keep an eye on, and Scott O'Neill was asked when part of his comment about the trade deadline was also, it depends where you are obviously in the standings. So whether there's nervousness, whether there's intrigue, tension, I think if you are on the bubble versus maybe first, the perspective is a little bit different as well.
Yeah, 100%. Somebody knows a little bit about the trade deadline because he played the game. He played in the NHL. He's Brian Boucher, joining us now from NBC Universal, and of course TNT. Brian, before we get into the meat of things, what was it like for you sitting at every trade deadline, not talking about you being a part of any deals, but having questions asked to you, knowing that you're completely out? That's not even, you don't even have control over that type of stuff.
Yeah, as a player, you have no idea what's going on upstairs in the offices, talks that are taking place. But it's an exciting time. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, most hockey players are hockey fans, and they're intrigued as to what their team's going to do, and also what other teams are going to do, because it kind of affects the way they're going to approach the rest of the season and going into the playoffs. So it's a nerve-wracking time for players, but at the same time, it's an exciting time. I mean, it's like waking up and it's Christmas morning, and maybe you get a new gift and whatnot, and it's good to see what goes on around the league. And then after that, you kind of settle in and get ready for the playoffs. But yeah, there's no doubt this is an anxious time for a lot of people.
I'm sure there are a number of anxious players on the Flyers as well, and we'll get to what they could do potentially in a minute. But this is our first time, obviously, seeing Philadelphia this season. Describe for us this team this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they're going well, they're a hardworking group, tenacious. They do tend to block a lot of shots. I mean, they will spend some time in their own zone, but they do make it difficult to get pucks to the net. So it can be somewhat frustrating to play against at times. But they're just a hardworking group. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they probably lack the high-end skill that a lot of elite teams have around the NHL. I mean, I know Matvei Michkov is a guy that a lot of people are noticing nowadays, and he just was named Rookie of the Month for February, and he's a talented player, but he's, at the end of the day, I don't even know if he's turned 20 years old yet. I mean, he's still a very young player. So this is when they play well, they do it by committee, and they do it as a group. They defend hard, and it may not be the prettiest thing to watch some nights, but it's an honest game that they play when they're going good.
Do you expect them to figure into the trade deadline, Brian? Do you expect to see some changes to that roster?
I think the two names that probably are mentioned the most are Scott Laughton and Rasmus Ristolainen. And, I think the Flyers would have to be really wowed with the offer in order to get rid of both those guys. I think Scott Laughton is a guy who's a homegrown player drafted here, understands what this franchise is, the past of the franchise when it was at its best, and he kind of bridges the gap between the past to the new. And just a real good locker room guy that I think that they're kind of hesitant to really move on from, because he's not an unrestricted free agent. He still has term left. And Rasmus Ristolainen, who has played terrifically this year, this is the best I've seen Rasmus Ristolainen play in a Flyers uniform. Maybe the best hockey he's ever played in his career. Has been tremendous for this team, and he should have been on Team Finland at the Four Nations if not for an injury right prior to the tournament. He's skating, he's big, he's using his legs to escape pressure. He's physical, when you need him, and he can kill penalties. Now he's on the first power play unit, so he brings a lot to this team that I think a lot of teams would love. But again, he's got term too, and as the cap goes up, his 5.1 cap hit is going to be actually quite palatable going forward. And if you trade him, I think, and John Torrell has been on quote as saying this, you trade him, and then tomorrow you're going to be looking around saying, where's our big right shot defenseman that was kind of nasty? They're hard to find. And if it was me, I wouldn't look to do it unless somebody came to me and said, we'll blow your socks off. And then at that point, you simply have to listen.
I remember the draft in Nashville right after the Flyers had drafted Matvei Michkov, and I saw Danny Briere in the elevator, and he had said, we're excited, but there's so many things that have to happen. And I knew a lot of that is when could they get him to come to North America? Has he lived up to the expectations as a young player and his high draft ranking?
Yes. Big picture, yes. Has there been some dips during the season? Absolutely. Like you see with all young players in this league. Is there areas of his game that certainly needs some brushing up as far as awareness, defensive awareness, situational awareness, when to go for offense, when not to go for offense? Absolutely. These are things that you're going to learn with time, but he brings a skill set that this team misses. And, probably the most skilled forward after this, you're looking at Travis Konechny and Owen Tippett, different types of skill, but overall, just this lineup lacks what Matvei Michkov has, which is a very high IQ once he gets inside the blue line. And I think he's got room for growth too. I mean, I think his skating still has room to grow. I think his conditioning has room to grow. Before the Four Nations break, he seemed to really be hitting a wall. Had a big game against Washington right prior to the break, and he's kind of carried it over here after the break. He looks way more refreshed. And obviously his confidence is growing. I think that last game against Pittsburgh was a case of good and bad. I mean, he got 3 points in that game, but he also was, quite reckless as they had the lead and seemed to be going for more offense at times. So again, young player gets excited, sees points, wants to get more. You can't fault him for that.
Okay, I promise you were going to be 5 to 6 minutes, so I'm going to go outside that, and I apologize because you still hold the modern day NHL record for longest consecutive shutout streak, 332.01. Did you believe that when you set the record, that it would still be holding up to this day?
I knew it'd be, once they changed the rules of the game, I knew it'd be awfully difficult to break. I mean, when I got that record, it was in the old rules where there was a red line.
Yeah.
And you were allowed to clutch and grab. And now with 3-on-3 overtime and no red line and the crackdown on slashing and whatnot, it seemed like it was going to be much more difficult to break. And people always ask me, how I feel about it. I mean, I wish I would have won 3 Stanley Cups and been a bona fide number 1 goalie in the NHL and maybe won some Vezina trophies. But if I have to settle for a 5-game shutout streak as the only thing that people will remember me by, I'm happy to have it. And anytime anybody gets close, I get the voodoo doll out and I cheer against them.
Yeah, you're gonna start being like the Miami Dolphins in the 70s.
Exactly.
They're gonna start You're gonna get video of you cracking champagne when somebody can't break the record. So every year I'm going to be paying attention to that. So thank you so much for humoring me on that one. Appreciate your time. Enjoy the game tonight, and thanks so much for your time.
All right, guys. Great to be with you. Take care.
Thanks so much.
See you, Brian. Brian Boucher from the Flyers broadcast. That is incredible. Like 332.01.
Yeah.
And I know it's a modern day record. But still, the fact that you think it was with the Phoenix Coyotes. Brian, I'm a Flyers fan from youth, and of course I remember Brian Boucher when he was a Flyers goaltender too. So just to
I forgot you were a Flyers fan when you were growing up.
huge.
Yes.
Bobby Clark, Flin Flon, Manitoba.
Yeah.
Reggie Leach. I go down the list. It's been a long time, but then you start working in the business and you have to stop cheering for them.
Yeah.
But a little part of me does still, a little bit.
Not tonight.
Not tonight.
Not next week.
Because I know who signs my paychecks. Yeah. Or next week.
But 10-year-old Jamie Thomas, there's a small part of him that hopes that the Philadelphia Flyers get that second wildcard spot.
If it was Philadelphia and the Jets in the Stanley Cup final, I'd be a happy guy. That's what we could hope for. Best case scenario.
There you go. You were a Flyers fan in the 80s.
Yes.
But speaking of 80s,
okay,
let's stick with goaltenders.
Right.
You have another great episode of Ground Control that is out.
Right.
It came out earlier this week. Pokey Reddick was your guest for it, who many of us, if you were a Winnipeg Jets fan, if you were a hockey fan in the 80s, but especially if you were a Jets fan, 1.0, many of us remember Pokey Reddick. Pokey Reddick got Pokey and the Bandit.
He's so, like, the stories he told me were the best, but I think the part that we laughed about the most, because he played with the Brandon Wheat Kings, and anybody that's been to Brandon, you understand when you go in the rink, there's a smell of agriculture in there. And I had heard about it. And I remember the first time I was traveling there with the Lethbridge Hurricanes. I'm like, what is that smell? And then I see cows filing down the side of the bus. And I've never seen that before. It was insane. So I'm stick handling while I'm trying to find the video, Pokey Reddick. But he was great. And if I don't find it.
Well, just tell us about it.
Yeah.
Then.
So basically.
What can people look forward to?
So he was here for Black History Month, the ambassador. He talked about how important that is to him still to this day, and it is. And then he talked about John Ferguson, who was the general manager of the Jets and the 1.0 era when Pokey was a part of the Jets, and talked about how great he was in terms of being in his back corner, supporting him, realizing how good of a goaltender he was. And then there's some funny stuff when he's talking about when he faced the Oilers, and he goes, I said to myself, maybe I can keep it under 7 tonight. Just because to be a goaltender in the 80s could not have been fun.
No.
If you look at their numbers, their career numbers, 3.50 goals against average.
Yeah.
That was considered good.
Yeah.
Now that it has to be like 2.30 for you to go like that. So Brian touched on a little bit about the change in the era. There's a change. There was like when he played Brian Boucher, it was like holding, hooking, everything went. And then when Pokey Reddick played against the Oilers, they had to change the rules about power plays because the Oilers would just score all the time. So he was great about that. So just go to YouTube, Winnipeg Jets YouTube, to check it out. He was fantastic.
He also talked about equipment. I know a ton of you watching love equipment
Yes.
talk. And obviously, if you were a netminder in the 80s, your equipment looked very different than what they experience today.
So like even when I played minor hockey, you get goaltender equipment. You were the only wasn't fitted like it is nowadays.
Right.
Parents buy their stuff. You wore that no matter how tall or small you were.
Yeah.
But he was telling a story about there's deer hair inside the goal pads, and it moves, it shifts when it gets wet. So there'd be like holes there, and like I can imagine the bruising on those guys.
Yeah.
They can't shoot the puck as hard as they do now, but still, the protection was not anywhere close to what it is now, and it got heavy. It's just so.
So there's lots for you to look forward to. So make sure you go to.
You talk about 10-year-old Jamie. That when you talk to Pokey Reddick, I'm just sitting there going, you just ask him all the stuff. Like going against the Oilers, that power play must have been terrifying. So that's what all it was, and he's great. So I invite you to go check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Another episode of Ground Control that you don't want to miss. I saw some people also mention Runway. Obviously, that debuted on the last game in Nashville.
Yeah.
So if you haven't had the opportunity to check it out, you want to. Parker Ford is it's a 21-minute episode, but the debut of Parker Ford, if you remember, made his NHL debut in Boston, in his hometown backyard, was able to score in that game too. There's so many great moments throughout. So I encourage you to really go to the Jets YouTube channel. There's a whole bunch for you to check out about your Winnipeg Jets.
Colte Chris, my pads weigh 40 pounds
by game end.
Hey, last one before I go.
Yes.
So minor hockey, this is when I was 12. We went to Drumheller, Alberta. Drumheller is like full of farm kids. I'm from a smaller town outside of Calgary. Clearly not the farm kids. We lost 11-1. We got outshot 75-10. Our goaltender Gannon lost 10 pounds. That's how sweaty he was afterwards because the equipment's so heavy and how busy he was. And I remember my dad going, poor Gannon, poor Gannon. You guys left him. I'm like, Dad, did you see the size of those kids there? We were terrified the whole time. Poor Gannon. If you don't even know those guys, you would die. Farm kids are terrifying.
Poor Gannon.
Poor Gannon.
Poor Gannon. Quickly, as we wrap up our show for you today, the Jets returning home for this one game against Philadelphia. It's a stretch now of 5 games against Eastern Conference opponents. The Jets with the number 1 home record in the NHL, 23-5-3. Philly, 11-13-7 on the road for it. Jets 11-1 in their last 12 games. Looking to start a new win streak here tonight. The Flyers have historically in recent seasons caused them some issues. It's been very much these games feast or famine for both sides. So we will see what's in store for us here tonight. The Jets looking to get the power play back on track. When it comes to the lineup notes for the Jets, very quickly, Morgan Barron returns to the lineup after missing the last 8 games. Colin Miller, who didn't play in Nashville, looks to be good to go. We're expecting to see him back on that third pairing with Logan Stanley. And Connor Hellebuck will be your starter.
And looking for his 9th consecutive personal win streak, which would tie his franchise record.
Which,
Doesn't he? Yeah, there's just a never-ending.
We've seen so many of them this year. He has been, obviously, we have talked ad nauseum about what a tremendous job Connor Hellebuck has done this season, undoubtedly will continue to do as well. But there is a lot of excitement over the next week. Obviously, over the remainder of the regular season, as we go towards, as Scott O'Neill always references, game 83 of the season, with the start of the postseason in the middle of April. But a lot of intrigue over the next week as to whether it be the Winnipeg Jets or other teams in the NHL do, with the trade deadline happening on March 7th, which is Friday of next week. All right.
Yeah, that's it from us. Huge game
Time for us to
tonight.
go. It's a 6 p.m. game.
Yep. So
don't forget that on Sportsnet.
On Sportsnet,
You can always...
CJOB, Power 97. We should just put this on our shirts from now on.
Yeah, we'll just add it.
And someone bought this hat, by the way. So
yeah?
It does work.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at you go.
So I think I'm going to walk out of here with this hat.
We can talk about...
I paid for this hat.
You know what? You can tell that you had retail experience.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I know you did.
Randy River.
And sports.
And Sports Check.
You had a bunch.
Yeah. I know
right.
people. I know how to handle people.
All right, now we're going to go off the rails. That's a whole nother show for a whole nother day. All right. Thanks so much, everybody, for checking in. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, the rest of your weekend. Don't forget to catch the game tonight. Hopefully, if you have the opportunity, come on down to Candlelight Center. It is the Jets and Flyers before Winnipeg heads back out on the road.
Enjoy the game tonight.
Thanks so much for checking in, everyone.